In this lecture, let's take a look into what is JPA. Well, JPA stands for Jakarta Persistence API. Jakarta Persistence API is formerly known as Java Persistence API. Well, Eclipse Foundation is basically took ownership of Java EE, and Eclipse Foundation has changed the name from Java Persistence API to Jakarta Persistence API. Well, JPA is just a standard specification that facilitates object relational mapping to manage or relational data in a Java applications. It provides a platform to work directly with objects instead of using SQL statements. Well, in Java, JPA basically provides object relational mapping feature. Alright, and JPA it provides a standard APIs, and there should be an implementation for JPA standard APIs. For example, there are popular JPA implementations like Hibernate, Eclipse Link, Top Link, MyBetis. So these are the very popular JPA implementations. Well, consider we are using JDBC to perform different database operations in a Java application. Then what we basically do? We create a lot of SQL statements. For example, let's say we want to insert a record in a database table. Then we create a insert SQL query, and then we use JDBC to execute the insert SQL query. Similarly, let's say we want to select the record from the database table. Then we have to write select SQL query, and then we use JDBC to execute the select SQL query. Similarly, if you want to perform delete and update operations, then you have to create delete and update SQL queries, and then you have to use JDBC to execute these SQL queries. Alright, without using JPA, you have to write a lot of SQL statement, and you have to use JDBC to execute the SQL statements. So if you use JDBC, then you have to deal with the SQL statements. But JPA basically provides a platform to work directly with the objects instead of using SQL statement. It means that we can directly create an object of the class, and we can directly store that object into a relational database table as a row. Alright, we don't have to create a SQL statement to insert the records. For example, consider here we have a address Java class. It has a fields like ID, street, city, state, country, zip code, and on the other hand we have addresses table. It has a columns like ID, city, country, state, street, and zip code. As JPA facilitates object relational mapping, so we can use JPA to directly map this Java class object fields with these table columns. Alright, in Java we basically create object of the class using new keyword. For example, look at here, we have created object of the address class, and we have set all the values to the address object, and then we can use a JPA to directly persist this object into relational database table as a row. Okay, so this object, whenever we persist using JPA into database table, then this becomes a row here. Okay, one object becomes a one row in a database table, for instance like this. Alright, so we can use the JPA to directly work with the objects instead of writing the SQL statements. Alright, well, if we use a JDBC, then we have to write the insert SQL query to insert the values in a database table columns, right? But JPA basically allows us to persist object directly into database table as a row. Alright, so JPA is basically object relational mapping, so we can directly map object fields with the database columns. Well, JPA provides a lot of annotations to directly map a Java object with a relational database table. For example, add entity, add table, add ID, add column. So these are the few JPA annotations that we can use to map a Java class with a relational database table, as well as a Java class fields with the relational database table columns. Alright, we will see in a course how we can create a JPA entity and then how we can map with the relational database table. Just remember, JPA provides a lot of annotations to map a Java class with the relational database table, and also we can use the JPA annotations to customize the table structure. Well, let me recap what is JPA. Well, JPA is just a standard specification that provides object relational mapping to manage relational data in a Java applications, and JPA provides a platform to work directly with the objects instead of using SQL statements. Alright, we can use JPA to directly persist an object into relational database table as a row, and we can use JPA to select an entire row in an object. We can use JPA to delete an entire row. We can use JPA to update an entire row. okay, using objects. Now we understood that JPA is just a standard specification and it does not have any implementation, right? Now the question is, what is the popular JPA implementation, or which one is the popular implementation of JPA specification? The answer is Hibernate is one of the popular JPA implementation or JPA provider. Alright, in next lecture we'll see what is Hibernate. I will see you in next lecture.